Hi everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and this is a video overview of this knife. This is a full custom knife, and the knife is produced by Bob Dozier. Bob Dozier is one of the most famous knife makers in the world, and he lives in Arkansas. He has studied under some of the finest custom makers, including Bob Lovelace. And this knife is his, it is a 3-inch version of his DKFH, and that stands for the Dozier Knife Folding Hunter. And as you can see, it has a classic drop point shaped blade. The grind lines on this knife, and let's see if I can get them, they are impeccable. They are perfect. They're absolutely symmetric. They're nice and crisp and clean. I mean, Dozier did just a great job. This knife runs D2, which is one of Dozier's preferred steels, and it runs the special Dozier heat treat, which is really quite excellent. The handle is a full titanium handle. It's titanium on both sides. Essentially, this is the Dozier Sebenza. There are, minimalist, very minimal design features to it. There is the pivot, a stop bar for the blade, and then one standoff here in the back, and I believe that's just a G10 backspacer. No ornamentation there. It has a thumb stud only on one side. This knife is equipped for a right-handed carry. The thumb stud, when I got it, was incredibly aggressive. It just like obliterated my thumb. So I dulled it down a little bit, but it's still plenty grippy. As you can see, the knife is a frame lock, and there you can see the detent ball. The frame lock, let me see if I can get up close on this here. The frame lock is very coarsely cut. This is not a water jet. This looks like this was cut on a bandsaw or some kind of scroll saw. I'm not 100% sure, but man, is it a rough cut. It really has no impact on performance. You never touch it. The pocket clip has a nice good deal of tension to it, but it's not crazy, and it appears to be made of the same titanium material. And in addition to that, the lockup here on this knife, as you can see, is nice and early. Very, very good lockup. In addition to that, it is very, very easy to open and close this knife. You can give it a quick thumb flick and it'll pop right out. A couple of things about this knife that are interesting. I don't know if they're drawbacks or not, but the jimping here is very, very roughly cut. You are not going to move your finger at all. I mean, it just locks your finger in. But at the same time, that means that it's a really big shred hazard. It'll shred your pocket, it'll shred your fingertips, those kind of things. The other thing is this area right here where the thumb stud goes into the handle. Let me see if I can close it up. That area right there is not the most comfortable place to get to a thumb stud. Because the pivot is so silky smooth, the knife just flies out. But when you have your hand here, and during work, there is the potential that these sharp edges could go into your finger. I found that the way that I hold the knife, the fat of my finger kind of rests in there, and so I don't really have any worries about that happening. And because of the way that the knife is shaped and the way the pocket clip is shaped, when I've used the knife, there hasn't been any real hot spot issues. I will note that there is just a tad bit of walk in the lock bar. So when you lock the knife, there you go, and you can always get just a little squick. See, just a little bit more. And it doesn't really matter because even without squeezing it, it's still rock solid, absolutely rock solid, up, down, left, right. No blade play whatsoever. If you're looking for something that's a little bit different than the norm, if you're looking for something that maybe sort of fits in that same Sebenza use pattern but is a little different, I would strongly recommend taking a look at the Dozier knives. These knives are really great. They're made by one of the best makers, one of the like the all-time classic makers in the United States. Mr. Dozier is a relatively older gentleman. I think he's like 72 or 73, and his output is pretty staggering. His output matches that of a gentleman half his age. And these are really refined, beautiful knives, and they have a lot of features that make it clear to you that these are designed to work, that these are not knives to be primped over, and he doesn't design them to be safe queens. I really like the knife. It's excellent. It's very smooth. There are some sharp edges, as I showed you here with the lock bar is a little rough cut. And it's a little pokey here, and the thumb stud's pokey. But again, if you're using this knife as a work knife, if you're going out in the fields or you're using gloves, this thing isn't going anywhere. And I think that in part it's just because we've been so used to sort of, I don't want to say sissified knives, but knives that really emphasize their looks over their use. And this knife does not do that, even though it is a really nice, really elegant looking knife. They're relatively inexpensive for a custom maker, for a custom knife made by somebody with the fame and credentials that Bob Dozier has. The big issue is that he doesn't produce them in any regular numbers, and the wait lists are really long. So they're relatively hard to find. If you can find one, they don't go for all that much, but they're really great knives. I mean, this is an excellent, excellent, excellent knife. A really good example of Dozier's work. And also note that the spine on the D2 is a little bit thicker than the spine on a Sebenza. All in all, I really like the knife. If I had to compare it straight up to a Sebenza, it'd be really hard. I don't know which one I would choose. I mean, this knife is a really great working knife, and so is the Sebenza. The Sebenza is a bit more refined, but this knife has a couple of things that I like better. I much prefer this blade shape. And while the grind on the Sebenza is good, it's not as good as the Dozier grind. Finally, I think that I like the pivot on the Dozier more than the pivot on a Sebenza. The pivot on a Sebenza, or at least on the Sebenza that I've had, is nowhere near as fast or as smooth as this pivot is. It's a tough call, but you know, this knife is different, and I think that different, especially when we're talking about a market as saturated as the Sebenza market is, that different is good. So if you get a chance, you should go check out the Dozier, the DK, the Dozier Knives Folding Hunter, the DKFH. And this is a really, really good everyday carry. It comes in at about 3 inches, and it weighs about 3.5 ounces. So that's the Dozier Knives Folding Hunter full titanium frame lock.